Hello and welcome to the big picture. The 3-day visit of US President Barack Obama has ended, which by all accounts was eventful and path-breaking. The relations between the two countries, it is said, has been taken to a new level. Much has been discussed and debated over the last 3 days on many issues which have come up during the bilateral discussions and also emanating out of the joint statement. Now, with the benefit of hindsight and also with the time we have had to look into the fine print, we should be able to understand better the tangible outcomes of the visit. To discuss this, I have with me an eminent panel of guests: Arundhati Ghosh, former Indian ambassador; Bharat, Karnad, research professor in National Security Studies at the Center for Policy Research and someone who has been on the National Security Advisory Board; Pinak, Ranjan, Chakravarthy, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs; Chidananda, Rajghatta, foreign editor and US correspondent of the Times of India; and Vivian Fernandes, senior business and economic journalist. Welcome to all of you. Arundhati Ghosh, I would like to come to you first. A lot was made about in the last 3 days. We have discussed a lot on this, but with the benefit of hindsight, having seen all the documents, whatever has been available in the public domain, you think that the term used by the Foreign Secretary when she briefed the press after the bilateral meeting about the logjam has been broken, the deal is done, as far as the civil nuclear deal is concerned. Would you agree with it?
Well, it appears that she was speaking in terms of the logjam between the two governments. That has been broken. It does not mean if you take the deal to include the commercial and technical negotiations which have to take place between NPCIL and the companies, the American companies. That is still to take place. What she refers to as the commercial and technical things are still open.
Right.
So maybe we find it commercially not viable, maybe.
When it comes to actual negotiations, with the suppliers?
With Westinghouse, they seem to have gone quite far, not so much with GE, because GE has got permission from their, what is it called? Their nuclear regulatory body only last September.
Right.
So it's, GE is not as far ahead as Westinghouse. So that still remains, but the logjam between the two governments on two issues, I found that in the media discussions they were mixing up the two, the liability and
the tracking thing.
The tracking. These are two separate things, but both of them.
But you think both of them have, the logjam has been broken
as far as the governments are concerned.
Okay. Bharat, Karnad, would you agree with that?
Well, look, I think basically the assessment of risk, the commercial risk that American supplier companies will face will have to be made by them. And in that sense, yes, it's true. The two governments have cleared the table, as it were, of at the government level, the resistances that were there. But the main thing and the decisive aspect in this is really the commercial risk assessment by the supplier companies.
Right.
And I don't think that American supplier companies are going to undertake even anything other than a zero risk contract, which then means that it becomes very difficult to accept the kind of possibility of lawsuits in Indian courts by people and so on. Even outside the 1,500 crore liability insurance pool that the government is setting up, which again gets back to the whole point about whether or not this is ultra virus or subversive of the Indian Act, 2010 Act.
Right.
Because ultimately it's the Indian taxpayer, the Indian government that bears the cost if ever there is a nuclear accident, God forbid. And so it becomes a guarantor of American technology that's not tested, that's not proven. As Arundhati has suggested, one of the new designs has not even been certified by their regulatory agency. So we then become the guinea pigs. The first time such a thing is set up, because no such plant has been allowed to be constructed on US homeland or any of its territories.
Okay.
So, there is risk to us, and the question is whether, somewhere down the line, the courts will not come in to decide whether this compromise that's been struck doesn't violate the Act of Parliament.
So, in
I
fact,
don't know.
In
I
fact,
think the whole idea was not for the Indian taxpayer or the Indian government to bear the cost.
In fact, Bharat,
happens to be the case.
In fact, Bharat Karnad, I think, last week when we had, few days back when we were discussing this, and you were raising exactly the same questions. So you have not found answers to these questions which you raised last week and after all this also. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. It's merely, in a sense, it has been made more complicated by the two governments deciding that they have no issues to deal with, when in fact there are major issues that need some kind of a resolution, and that hasn't happened.
Okay. So Chakravarthy, would you like to respond, Arundhati Ghosh, before
No, I keep hearing Bharat saying this, that it's not tested, etc. Westinghouse is there in China, has been there for 4 years.
He's talking about not tested in its own, in America itself.
No, in their own country, it's a different issue. But to say it's never been tested,
for many years.
this is not correct.
Okay. Mr. Chakravarthy, the other important point Bharat Karnad has been making is also about the insurance aspect of it. Why should Indian government stand for any mistakes which can happen by the US supplier? Why should Indian government be covering up for that?
Well, I think one part of the thing is that I've read somewhere that India has given some sovereign guarantees also.
Right.
And of course you have the insurance pool. Now you are dealing with a risk factor here. The commercial risk factor, the accident or disaster risk factor, these are the risk factors. Now you cannot have a foolproof system where there will be no risk at all. I do not think even walking down the road you might get knocked down. There is a risk. So you are dealing with probabilities here. You have to reduce the risk to the minimum. You fly on a plane, there is a risk. So how do you do it? Why do you do it? So you have to take certain steps to ensure that risks are limited and risks are reduced.
So what you're trying to say that the claim of the Indian government, the claim of the US that the logjam has been broken, the deal is done, both governments, as Arundhati Ghosh was pointing out, as far as the government level the deal is done, and the risks which have to be assessed by the US suppliers is their problem, but we have given them enough security for that. Is this what you're trying to say?
What has happened is that there are no governmental barriers anymore. That is what has happened. Otherwise, the US government can say, we will not allow you to export. They will need an export license for.
Okay. Yes, Chidananda.
So
you need to bring some more clarity from the US point of view.
okay, but I don't speak for the US.
No, you don't, but you know what's happened there.
What I can say is, if you can step back, as far as I'm concerned, this deal is not about nuclear, not about energy at all. This entire nuclear, we seem to get lost in fine print, small details. To me, this was about breaking sanctions, right? We might not even see a megawatt of nuclear energy out of this deal for God knows how many years. And for all you know, the companies may not find the terms acceptable. We might see 100 gigawatt of solar energy before 1 megawatt of nuclear energy flows out of this deal. To me, this is about breaking sanctions, and what this so-called deal has demonstrated is the two governments, or the heads of governments, can actually break through their respective bureaucracies, the small technical details. There is will at the top to break through, and to me this has demonstrated that. And the news about the kind of investments they're talking about in solar energy is far bigger. I mean, to me these two countries actually are looking at a solar energy deal now. That excites me much more than this trivial thing about
we look at the
section 46 and subsection this, and my eyes glaze over when I hear all this.
If you look at the joint statement, there's much more written about the solar energy, the alternate energy.
Absolutely, and this was about breaking sanctions, and I think we have done that.
Solar energy is clearly the big thing.
Absolutely. But one second, Bharat Karnad, would you agree with that this is about breaking the sanctions, and getting access to advanced technologies which we have been denied so far because of the sanctions.
And particularly
Would-
for
Not necessarily
Fukushima,
nuclear, other technologies also.
Yeah, exactly, other technologies in other areas, not just in the nuclear. Would you agree with that? Would you look at it in that kind of a
Look,
positive
look.
manner?
No, but was there that kind of a connection made by the United States in the first place? That either you go remove the resistances in the nuclear field or you won't get solar. I don't think that connection was ever made by
What about
Washington.
solar?
And the contention by previously made here that we need advanced nuclear technologies. What advanced nuclear technologies are we going to get that we ever needed? We have our own indigenous heavy water moderated natural uranium reactors that we specialize in, that we have invested in. And these are the programs that are indigenously developed that are going to be denied funds because we're going in for these exorbitantly priced foreign reactors, not just American, but Areva and the Russian.
Yeah.
And then we get into a fuel dependency cycle. These are the things that we have been stressing since the nuclear deal was on the anvil. And that these concerns remain. And these have not been addressed. So when you talk nuclear technology, you can buy completely irrelevant technology, yes. Does it ease up the trade for uranium, natural uranium to get it from the source countries? Yes.
Yeah,
but
that
then
is the
that we
idea.
could have done in any case without being part of this setup. Meaning we could have gone to Gabon, to Niger and so on and gotten natural uranium.
Okay.
So we really did not need this nuclear deal for accessing natural uranium.
Okay.
This is the point.
But the other point,
And people talk
What about NSG?
the other
technology.
point,
What nuclear technologies? I don't understand it.
Let's
okay,
talk
the other point, Arundhati Ghosh, I'll come to you, Vivian. The other point which is being made about, this whole deal is also that the US President promised openly, in a statement that US will help us to get into those 4 export control regimes, and is that something which is going to make a big difference?
Yes, it is. But before I get to those 4 regimes, can I just get back to sanctions? It was sanctions on high-tech transfers. And as Bharat knows very well, there were dual-use technologies.
Absolutely.
And dual-use covered a huge
Whole lot of
variety
things.
of industries. And I have no idea about what the technology is required in solar engineering and the solar cells is. But
Even that could, are you trying to say that even that could have been
even
threatened?
that could have been affected because of the comprehensive nature of the sanctions.
The dual use nature.
While the sanctions were removed in 2005, most of them, in the detail, there were I think again Mr. Rajghatta mentioned, the bureaucracies on both sides, after so many years of being stuck in a particular groove, were finding it difficult to meet.
Okay.
That they are meeting.
Okay.
But to come back, I'll just finish this 4
Yeah.
things. It's a part of the same that we get access to technologies, and I would draw to the attention of your viewers that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had in 2004, just before he went to the United States, made a statement saying we are seeking the elimination of the technology denial regimes.
Right.
Regimes.
Okay. Chidananda, very quickly before, we have to move on to the next subject. Yes, very quickly as far as this.
No, so I was saying this is also an important psychological moment. We've all been through this whole sanctions regime through much of the 80s and 90s. We can either wallow in the past or look into the future and say, all right, these 2 countries have made a breakthrough, and let's look forward. I think that much was achieved.
Okay, Bharat, Karnad, very quick rejoinder to what you have to say, because we have to move on to other things.
You're asking me to as a rejoinder?
Yeah. Them saying that this is going to open up technologies which were being denied to us, dual-use technologies. So, is that going to make a big difference?
Well, look, I don't know what technologies we are going to get that are going to be so advanced and that are going to be critical to our programs. Most of our most strategically sensitive programs do not have any kind of Western technology inputs other than tangentially. The point I think here made is that in some ways we are going to benefit by memberships in the NSG and so on.
Right.
I've never understood why is it that we have not been exporting our CANDU or rather the INDU reactors to countries abroad, to Africa and Latin America and Asia and so on, and imposed our, under the IAEA regimes, under IAEA safeguards, and gotten revenues over the years. You have done nothing of the kind.
Okay.
But we have now suddenly gotten into it that we want to import reactors and sideline our own indigenously developed technology, and therefore, in a sense, pretty much drive the 1955 Bhabha plan into the ditch. I just don't see what the trade-off in benefits is by doing this sort of a thing.
And what happens to Make in India? Anyway, we will move on to other issues now. Let me bring in Vivian. Vivian, one of the major reasons why Barack Obama came here, apart from the gestures of attending the Republic Day parade, is to help his own country to get more business and investments. And you think that they have been successful in that? We will come to how India has benefited from this trip. Vivian?
I think, President Obama is certainly not as free market oriented as President Bush. And even in the State of the Union address, he had said that he was going to place much more emphasis on American companies setting up doing manufacturing in America, against cracking down on them, keeping their profits abroad. But I think there is manufacturing industry is an area of mutual interest, and here I would blame our own policies for not being facilitative in getting for American investments to our country, because this is not a very easy place to do business, and the BJP government itself has scuppered some of the moves, like for example in the nuclear deal, where it inserted that clause about unlimited liability of the nuclear suppliers. So also in the case of foreign direct investment, it is the BJP government that has not been allowing American companies from setting up shop in this country.
Not BJP government, BJP as an opposition party.
When it was in the opposition party,
right.
And even now, its own state government, the governments where it is ruling, like in Rajasthan and elsewhere, they have not been allowing foreign retailers to set up shop. So the BJP itself will have to clear up its own confusion. Number one. Number two, I think there are certain areas where we need to open up. For example, railways. This is an area where there has been no reform. General Electric has been wanting to set up.
Prime Minister spoke extensively about it, and he even said that he is hoping to get more technology from the US.
Exactly, but we need to open up the railways, and the General Electric was keen to set up a loco manufacturing unit, I think either in Maraura or Mashobra, and it's the railway bureaucracy that scuttled the entire move. So that is one area where I think large amount of investment can flow in. But there are certain areas of concern. For example, on pharmaceuticals, I think we have a very robust patent regime. There's a due process that is followed, a judicial process that is followed. But the big pharma of the US is not happy with our patent regime and has been putting pressure on the Indian government. And I think we must not give in to that pressure.
Okay.
Secondly, on agriculture, there is an issue because the Russians are not buying certain products, food products from USA. For example, chicken legs. There's a 1-year ban from August last year, and I think the Americans don't consume chicken legs. If Chidu will bear me out, I think that is one area where they can, we can face a lot of competitive pressure, and we'll have to protect our own poultry industry. So there are certain areas of concern, but there are also areas where we need to be much more welcoming of US investment.
Okay, Mr. Chakravarthy, you think that some of these areas of concerns before the US president came in here, there was a lot of discussion about patent regime, about the kind of investment. We were told that one of the biggest complaints to the US investors was that the kind of atmosphere, the investment atmosphere here, and also the tax regime. You think on these two issues and these 2 or 3 issues, the US delegation would have gone back a little more reassured from what
I think we have heard positive noises on the tax issues, that we will not indulge in as quote unquote tax terrorism and things like that. So I expect that the next budget will probably have some reforms on that account. Number 2, on the IPR issue, I think they have formed a joint group to discuss all these issues. And do not forget, even NGOs in the US have petitioned the US president, saying that please do not force India to change its patent laws, because the generic industry is supplying very severely needed drugs to the rest of the world
At a very low cost.
at naturally a very low cost. So there is a
International petition.
It's an international petition, but including, I think, a lot of NGOs from all over the place. So that's an important factor. So there is a lot of lobbying going on. Obviously, the corporate lobby will lobby for its interest and ensure that.
And you don't think the Indian government has succumbed to these pressures?
No, not yet, because
far.
the Supreme Court is there. For example, evergreening of patents, which is also a demand, saying that I'll tweak the patent a little bit and get another 20-year patent on the same drug almost. Now, the Supreme Court of India has stepped in a judgment. I think it is one of the Glivec cases, I don't know which one. But they have said that, sorry, it has to be a completely new drug. You cannot simply keep tweaking an old formula and continue to get patents and sort of reap the profits.
Right.
So these are some of the issues that need to be taken. I don't think these are insoluble. These are issues that we have to sit together, and I think the
these
groups have
meetings
been
which have
formed.
happened in the last couple of days, you think has helped ease in some of these pressures, at least on...
Well, I think there is agreement that we have to look forward.
Exactly.
We have to go ahead and we have to discuss this.
Okay, Chido, $4 billion. This is, I mean, in terms of tangible results of this 2-3 day summit and meetings, U.S. President has spoken about $4 billion of which includes loans also.
Yeah, a lot of it is loan guarantees.
Yeah.
And
So
Exim Bank, I think.
Is that what this whole trip has been as far as the business and investments and trade and commerce is concerned?
No, and I don't think you can put it in dollars and cents, to be honest. And look, the US is largely a private economy, a driven country. So a lot of it will depend on the.
My question, additional question to that is this: after these meetings, you think the private investors in America would have been a little more reassured about if they have to invest here?
I think
because
so.
That is the test for this.
I think so. See, beyond all this style statement, etc., this Prime Minister has at least projected the intent to make India a more business-friendly place, not just for Americans. I think there are people all over the world looking for a better India. We have
been talking to the Japanese, the Chinese.
Absolutely, and I think one is the Prime Minister himself has set this agenda, and two, I think there is also increasing competitiveness among state governments. I see encouraging signs of state governments going out there. Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, they're all going out there, and even West Bengal, and this is a good sign.
Okay.
I think we are ready to be a competitive economy.
Okay. No, Arundhati, I need to move forward because we have to cover so many. We're running out of time. Defense framework agreement. This is one of the touted as one of the big things which has happened during this visit. Would you consider that as a very significant development?
In the way in which it happened, because we had the earlier defense framework agreement, but there was very little comment because it was overshadowed by the civil nuclear deal. But in the implementation, unfortunately, our Ministry of Defense was very coy and did not move ahead on...
In the last 10 years that this
That's
agreement
right.
was there.
So this time, when preparatory to Prime Minister's visit to the US in September, you had Chuck Hagel coming here, and he had one point agenda, which was getting the defense deal renewed. And he got it on the spot, informally, but got it on the spot. So it was expected. But I think that the way in which they have moved ahead, and the fact that Ashton Carter is coming in as their Secretary of Defense. It makes it a very major area of India-US cooperation.
Bharat, Karnad, how do you look at this renewal of the defense framework agreement? And it's being said that it is not just renewal, it's a completely new beginning, and they announced those 4 specific deal, specific co-production and co-development
Pathfinder projects.
Projects. So you think that there has been a movement?
Yeah. Well, look, if there's a movement, it's such a small step, it'll soon be forgotten. Look at what the projects are. Hand-launched Raven tactical drone. For God's sake, let's at least have perspective. For with the Russians helping you on things like nuclear-powered submarines, the Americans are willing to go no further than hand-launched drones. If we are so keen to get Western technology, then this is an insignificant step. It may lead to something, I don't know. You have had 10 years of trying to build up trust, so-called, that the Americans say that they lack in our relationship, and that's why the technology transfer has been missing, the really high technology stuff. And the other thing that they keep saying is, first buy our hardware. So in other words, they keep wanting to get into a transactional bent of policy, wherein they want us to keep buying the C-17s and the C-130Js, transport aircraft and so on, which is worth to them almost $8 billion to date, and that's what they want to keep on doing. And then they hand out these little crumbs with hand-launched Raven drones or some such thing, which really in the larger picture is not going to enhance our defense capabilities any. But if it's a start, fine, but I really don't see that there's a great departure from the transactional bent of policy that the US has been pushing.
Okay, Bharat Karnad, very quickly, I'll come to you very quickly, Bharat Karnad, about the Asia Pacific and the Indian Ocean thing which has been talked about, that India and the US will work closely on that. Do you see this as a major departure in India's approach towards the US, and how would you look at it, what kind of an impact will it have globally?
No, look, this has been continuation of the policy from the previous government, where Manmohan Singh also talked about finally, rather than merely looking west to from looking east to acting east,
yes,
which is a good thing. And I think the strategic vision in the joint statement that's been put out suggests that they're going to get going after all, meaning finally they're going to get the act together, and India will do more than it has done east of Malacca in terms of beefing up its cooperative and collaborative ventures with Japan, with Australia, with other countries offshore and on the Asian littoral, especially the ASEAN and particularly Vietnam.
Okay.
Yes, this is something that we should have done years ago, if not decades ago, and we have been lax in doing it because we really don't show much strategic sense. So if we're finally getting into a geostrategic appreciation of the situation, that's a good thing to happen.
Okay, Arundhati, Ghosh, the criticism is that this can lead to already China. We have been hearing noises from China saying that this is not what we expected and things like that. Are we going to be rubbing the Chinese on the wrong side with this kind of a arrangement?
It doesn't look like it. I see that there has been a message from the Chinese at the highest level to us, looking to how this is going to, we have, lovely words about our relationships. The External Affairs Minister is visiting China. The PM is supposed to be visiting China. I think we can overplay that.
We can
if it is in our interest.
Okay.
Let me finish my sentence. Yeah, I just finished.
No, we are running out of time.
Yeah, okay. So if we do it in our own interest,
absolutely,
then we must handle the Chinese and the Russians and the Pakistanis.
Look, we have to take care of. We have to do a little bit of balancing here, and while we go ahead with the US on various things, including the so-called Quad, the 4 countries which we had dropped earlier because China made some noises. But I think there is a realization that the more you accommodate China, China becomes tougher in terms of its demands. I think a point has been reached. I think India has reached a point where it has realized that you can't just keep listening to China's complaints and growls from time to time.
And
at the moment, the media is making those noises more than the government.
Chidu, very quick last words.
Look,
as the entire visit and.
So a generation ago, the Americans were talking to the Chinese and they were talking of G2 and resolving the Kashmir issue and so on. And this is a complete change from that. This is very, very significant change. I think India is in the happy position of being courted both by the United States and China and many other countries, European Union and so on. So we have to handle this carefully. I think this is a very momentous time in our history. And as far as I'm concerned, the only thing is, there's a saying that the worse than being an American friend is being an American ally. So I'd say be very careful of the American embrace too.
I think on that note we need to end.
Use the word ally. We are talking about a partnership.
I know, but this whole business of whether an ally or a partner or a strategic ally has been going on. But I guess we should take what Chidu says little seriously. Hopefully the government also will take note of it. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture same time tomorrow.